Good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're watching this podcast. Podcast series we call Race, Culture, and the Church. Race, Culture, and the Church. Being the engineer that I am, in addition to being a pastor, I like to look at it kind of like a Venn diagram with the three circles. You have race, you have culture, and you have the church. Ideally, we will hit, they'll all intersect, and we'll hit somewhere in that intersection. But at the very least, our goal is to hit 2 out of 3. But I think we'll hit all 3 today. And I am pleased to welcome back into this space the 7th Chancellor of the University of California at Davis, Chancellor Gary May.
Thanks for having me, Pastor Meeks. Good to be with you again.
It is, it's an incredible privilege. I wrote down here, and I was listening to a portion of that podcast right now, and also a podcast that I had with Jay Chenier. It was 28th of January that you were as they say, a lot of water has passed under the bridge between January 28th and now. I won't ask how's life on a personal level, unless you want to interject that, but how's life at the UC Davis level? What's the, usually the president gives a state of the state address, and I'm sure you've given a state of UC Davis address.
Right.
What's maybe a 2-minute state of the state Aggie address? How's UC Davis?
Well, I'm feeling very optimistic about UC Davis. This is the most normal the campus has been in 2 years. You never want to say the pandemic is behind us, but it does feel like we've turned a corner.
People are acting like it's gone, but even if it's not, folks are still succumbing to COVID, not so much in passing, but getting sick.
Right.
So I think at least mentally, folks have turned the corner.
Yeah. There's not as much fear of hospitalization or death as there was 2 years ago. And we're still testing on campus, but we're back to in-person classes, full speed ahead. And we expect that that'll be the way it is for the foreseeable future as the disease becomes endemic. And so we're proceeding in that fashion. We've had a lot of good news recently on campus. Last year, we crossed the $1 billion in research awards, $1 billion mark for the first time in our history. And that's, only 20 or so universities in the country are in that club. So.
And where does that money without getting too much in the weeds, where does that money come from? Is it corporate?
Most of it's federal government.
Okay.
Federal agencies sponsoring the National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, folks like that sponsor research in higher education and elsewhere. So.
Very good.
So we're happy about that. We staying with the financial theme. We, in terms of private philanthropy, we also set another record. We raised $323 million last year from privately donations, and that's the first time we've been over $300 million in the history of the university. And that included a very significant transformational gift that we announced last week from Linda and Stuart Resnick, $50 million for a new facility and a research fund.
Wow.
So
finances are coming in. We'll get to one of the things I do want to cover is cost of higher education in general. But the coffers of UC Davis are on the good side of the ledger, if you will.
We're moving in the right direction. We still have some work to do. We have, we're trying to address the structural deficit in our state funding that has been persistent for a while. We're making some progress. That's one of the reasons why we have to do fundraising, because we have issues on that side. But, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Interesting. You mentioned we've turned the corner societally, UC Davis-wise, in terms of COVID. Hybrid learning, is that a dinosaur, a thing of the past now?
No, I think we learned a lot during the pandemic about remote and hybrid learning. I think some of that will stay with us. I don't think we'll ever be 100% remote, again, unless we have to be for public health reasons. But I do think some of the things, I would say that some of our faculty were, prior to the pandemic, a bit reluctant to embrace remote learning or online learning, if you will. But having to do that by necessity over the last 2 years has opened some eyes to some of the opportunities there. And I think many are open to a blended approach, a hybrid approach, where some of what we teach will be done online, and some will be done in the classroom or laboratory.
Have you, you mentioned the instructors, the educators, it's kind of like being a wheel in a rut along a road. It's kind of like, well, I know to stay in that rut and I can do that. Do you get the same? Have you polled the students to see what their desire is?
Yeah, there's some things that students liked about it too. I think by and large, students prefer to be together in the classroom with their classmates. And you know, a lot of the learning doesn't happen in the classroom. It happens outside the classroom in what we call the co-curricular environment. And that was missing when everyone was in their home on Zoom. So students are happy to be back together, although they do like to have the flexibility to be able to watch a lecture on Zoom or using another method. So as I said, I don't think the hybrid or the remote approach is gone. I actually think it's with us now for good, but how we use it, just like how we reimagine the workplace, is something that we're still trying to evaluate.
Were there any cost efficiencies or savings that you saw, either in part or potential, or just the opposite?
Not really. I mean, initially we had a lot of costs involved in our IT.
Correct. Setting up.
Getting sufficient bandwidth for the students to access the networks and passing out, you know, laptops to students who were disadvantaged students who had needs and things like that. And, you know, more than 80% of the costs in higher ed are personnel. So we still had to pay our faculty. We still had to keep those things going. So, and on top of that, you know, we lost significant funding from when we had to cancel housing contracts, and so housing and dining lost significant amounts of money during the pandemic.
Might as well get into it. The cost of education, just kind of on and again, I'm not talking about, you know, a particular child in particular, but I mean, the cost of education, it's going up, it's not going down.
Right.
It seems it's just my perception. Education and the associated costs, the benefits are there. I don't think anybody would argue with the benefits of obtaining a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree. But as the youth would say, is the juice worth the squeeze? On the other side, as you jump that hurdle, you have a diploma in one hand and an IOU in the other.
Right.
Where are we with respect to the cost of education?
So there's a lot we can say here, probably more than what we have time for, but I'll just say a few things. One, speaking generically, not specifically in UC Davis or even the UC system.
Sure.
For public education, costs have gone up, but pretty much at the same pace as the costs of everything else, costs of inflation, you know, the rate of inflation. What has happened by and large in state institutions is the state investment has gone down. And so to make up for that difference, tuition and other fees have been raised. But the costs have not increased at a faster rate than inflation for the most part in public institutions. Now, that's not to say that it's something that we can point the finger elsewhere at. We have to look in the mirror too. There are ways we can be more efficient. And I do think you raise a good point about return on investment. We expect, any parent would expect that after they've had their son or daughter in school for 4 years and paid that tuition, that there's a job at the end of that. And I think that's part of our responsibility and obligation. And I think some of us may have lost sight of that. And so that's something we're trying to change at UC Davis in particular with a program we call Aggie Launch, where the goal is for 100% of our graduates to have a job offer or acceptance into a graduate program when they walk across the stage. So I do think there are also some things we can look at in terms of, you know, using what resources we have a little more effectively. For example, the summer is generally much less. Our facilities are much less utilized in the summer. We could probably improve that and things like that. But the reality is that higher education is expensive for some. We do have in the UC system something called return to aid, which 1/3 of the tuition that's paid that we collect is returned back into financial aid. And what happens is the more affluent or students are able to use their tuition money to subsidize the disadvantaged students. So I think the figure right now is if your family income is less than about $80K, you don't pay tuition. at the UC, in the UC, certainly not at UC Davis. Now, there are other things you pay. You pay for housing and you pay for food and books and things like that. So it's not your cost is not zero. But
Well,
the
that's
tuition's-
interesting. And that's why we have this space. I'm being educated. So if I am a single parent or double parent and the household income is $80,000 or less, and my daughter or child or son has been accepted in UC Davis, I don't pay tuition.
Right. Your tuition's going to be subsidized by that return to aid formula.
I think we need to, I don't know who's in charge of your marketing plan, but I think that needs to be marketed.
We try to say it, all of our recruiters and people in enrollment management, those people know it in financial aid. They know all about it and talk to prospective students and parents about that all the time.
What is, on average, I know there's no average, but give me one anyway, cost of education, not housing, not books, but just education per quarter at
I don't know the per quarter number. I'd have to go look. But the annual for a California resident, the annual is less than 30,000. I think it's around 27.
calendar year or quarter?
For the year.
For
whole
the year.
Yeah.
So 10,000 a quarter,
Roughly,
say.
Yeah. And for out of state, it's about double that.
Okay, 30,000 times 4, it's 6 figures. Got a diploma.
And this is all in. This is not just tuition.
No, I understand. So again, the diploma and the IOU.
I should also add, just real quick, about more than 50%, I think it's 55% of our students graduate without debt. I think that's
55%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mainly because of some of the other mechanisms I talked about.
Okay. And that's globally at UC Davis. That's not just in-state kids.
That's all graduates.
All graduates.
Yeah. But I would imagine the in-state students will have less debt because their tuition is much less.
Okay. And some of that has got to be, I'm guessing, because of affluence of the household. I'm paying cash for this. Okay. So, all right. I mean, that's something that would have to be teased out. You feel, asking you to grade yourself, I think that's fair at UC Davis.
Sure.
Grade yourself. You feel like you're in the B, A- category for delivery of education, the cost and benefit of the product.
I'll say it this way. We recently ranked, Washington Monthly magazine does a ranking of social mobility of all U.S. institutions, and we ranked among publics, we ranked second in the country in that ranking.
Wow.
Yeah. Forbes does another similar one where they look at your graduates' earnings after some period of their career.
Social mobility after graduation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Forbes ranking, we were fourth among publics. So both of those things tell me that we're doing pretty good in terms of the return on investment that our students get.
I would echo that. I was not unaware of that. I need to expand my reading library.
We'll send you all our rankings whenever you want.
I should be on your e-blast list if I'm not already. Speaking of higher education, now here we talk about the benefits of higher education. UC Davis is not, it's only because you're the chancellor and you're here that I'm bringing this up. It's not UC Davis per se, because it's pervasive throughout the country, the world, if you will. There's this inward bend that seems to be towards, dare I say, tribalism, that we are, it's me against them, whoever them are. You've had a couple, I know Sac State has had more than a couple of displays of hate on the campus. I'm assuming it could be a lonely person that is getting a thrill from the notoriety, or it could be more of a reflection of where folks are. And I guess, I don't either want to conflate nor pull apart that this is happening at, on the grounds of a place of higher education.
It's happening to us. It's happened to Sac State. It's one of the more disturbing aspects of my job recently. In terms of who's doing it, there were some men in black masks who hung a banner across an overpass
Correct.
at our place. We suspect that was an organization like Proud Boys. They didn't identify themselves, but that's what the suspicion is.
So not even, maybe not even associated with UC
Sometimes
Davis.
it's not even associated. The Proud Boys, by the way, had been in the city of Davis going to school board meetings and things like that during the pandemic, trying to intimidate policy around mask wearing and other things. So it's not like it's the first time we've seen that group. Now, the most recent incident happened in a dorm room where someone found, I think, one or two swastikas written on a wall or something like that. Some sort of vandalism. It's more likely that not that those were students because they were in the dorm room, I think all of this is symptomatic of broader society and the fact that in politics and the fact that people who have these kind of hate-driven feelings feel like they've been given permission to express them more openly. What do we do about it is the question, right? So a number of things we're trying to think about, some local and some broader. We've been working with our local Hillel House in Davis. We've formed a Jewish Student Advisory Committee, and it's not just students, Jewish Life Advisory Committee, where we're trying to improve the relationships between that community and the remainder of the campus. So we're having speaker series and exhibits and training, on anti-Semitism and all sorts of measures that we're trying to take to improve the local situation. Also in some discussions with local elected officials, the mayor of Davis, the Yolo County supervisor, about things we can do broadly in that community. And by the way, I'm meeting with them right after this, in this podcast. And then in addition to that, having similar, or just talked about having similar conversations with Sacramento's elected officials, the mayor and others. So hopefully we can figure out some measures we can take to curb this.
One of the things that, I don't know, I think about it's when we offer these type of opportunities. Typically, it's you're speaking to the washed already. You're speaking to those that are already predisposed to be open-minded, more tolerant. But the people that are perpetrating these things, they're not. Let me go out on a limb. They're not going to that.
Right. So, in fact, one of the criticisms I got was that we didn't have. Some of the students wanted to have more town halls and things about this topic, but I would agree with you that the people that are attending the town halls are not the people that need to hear the message.
Correct.
Preaching to the choir to be
exactly. So have you thought about, again? It's just my 2 cents. Doesn't mean much of anything other than 2 pennies, 2 copper pennies. What does UC Davis have in terms of required classes? I know when I went to school back in the day, there were certain classes you had to have. Mm-hmm. You didn't get a choice. I don't care if you're a vet major or engineer. Yeah. You have to take this class. Why not have an aspect of whatever a core class is that speaks to issues, cultural, social issues that, who knows, if I'm forced to sit here, it's like, well, I never heard that before.
Yeah. Let me say 2 things. The curriculum, I'm not opposed to what you suggested at all. I think there would be some value there, but the curriculum belongs to the academic senate, not the administration. So our faculty decide the courses that are taught, and I don't have any authority to mandate.
I'm going to have to give you your resume. You're Chancellor Gary May.
This is true of any chancellor in the UC, not just me.
You've got a megaphone, though.
But there's a solution. That's where I was going. So rather than thinking about classes, we have our orientation for our students where they have to do various trainings, and all students have to do this. So we've started to integrate some anti-Semitism messages into the online training that the students have to do. And every student does that as they come in to our university. So that's a captive audience, and it touches everybody, not just the people that would have to take a class.
Is it Jewish hate only? I mean,
no. I was just using that as an example.
Okay. So it is, for lack of a better descriptor, cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity.
DEI training, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so every person that comes to UC Davis is required to participate in that space.
Right. We have orientation in the fall for a week before classes started for all of our new students.
Okay.
Now, we just started the training I'm speaking of. We just started it two summers ago. So we haven't yet reached the entire population. But as we go through the years, everyone will have had the training.
That's awesome.
On the student side.
Have you had any, what's the feedback been, both from the givers of the information and those that are receiving it?
You know, it's mixed. There are some people that don't think these online training, these virtual training things work very well.
So it's online?
A lot of it is, not all of it.
Okay.
But, you know, people are at their computer having to answer questions and click through a series of scenes and things that they have to watch. But, you know, I think it does raise awareness about the issue. It makes people think more about their actions and what they are seeing and doing and saying, you know. So.
What is Davis's position on the clubs, the Greeks?
We have a pretty healthy Greek life at UC Davis. I don't know how many fraternities and sororities we have, but they're, you know, all the ones you would expect. Right?
And it's been, again, this is kind of weedy, but they've been open and part of the dialogue of this social, cultural awareness.
You know, I can't speak to that with any authority. I know our student affairs staff does do quite a bit of work with the Greek system in terms of, you know, trying to get the sort of service and behavior and collegiality that we want out of those students. But I don't have the specific knowledge of what they're doing.
Okay. I don't want to spend all my time on that side of the causeway. Don't get a whole lot of time at Chancellor May, so I do want to cross 80, cross the causeway, go down 80 to the 95817. We're on the corner of 4th Avenue and 39th Street. In the shadow, literally and figuratively, of UC Davis Health, sprawling, expanding campus. The more presentations I sit through on Aggie Square, and I see the project forward, and you've started to hit dates. Well, I don't think I'm going to be around. You know you're old when you see dates and buildings, and it's like, that'll be nice. I won't be here to see it, but there's a plan, and it's a very it's visionary, it's aggressive, it takes up a whole lot of space. Just as I asked, what's the state of UC Davis and Davis? What's the state of UC Davis Health in Sacramento?
Again, very positive and optimistic. You talked about the construction. There's probably, in the next 8 to 10 years, there's probably $6 billion worth of construction that's happening at UC Davis Health, inclusive of Aggie Square. But the biggest project is the bed tower, the hospital bed tower, that is going to replace some of the existing beds that we have.
Do you know how many beds, just off the top of your head? 200 plus, I'm guessing.
It's more than 200. I can get the exact number for you.
It's significant, and it's a tower replacement or a tower addition.
A little bit of both. So right now, what we have, you know, we don't have single rooms. We have traditional 2 beds in a room, and we're going to expand so that we can have single rooms as well as more operating room space, more other sorts of patient service and healthcare space, in addition to the bed tower. And we're going to repurpose some of this old stuff's going to be torn down. Some of it's going to be repurposed, and we'll have a more, you know, and we'll have a new ambulatory surgery center, which I think we're calling that 48X. And we have the rehabilitation hospital as well. That one actually is almost done. All those, and I'm probably forgetting some, are part of that construction number.
Just in general, from your perspective, the overall health, it's a weird word, the health of the health institution is where you feel the swim lane that it's in is a good one.
I do. I think from a patient care standpoint, all the ways we measure that look positive. We can always do better, and we want to get better. But I'm pleased with the trajectory that we're on, and that includes our, you know, service to Medi-Cal patients, which are a significant fraction of the patients we see. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy because we have that, you know, county hospital mission, but we also have we're the only trauma center in this part of California, and the cancer Institute and all these other things that we do on the high end.
Research, trauma, and
pediatrics, all those sort of things, that we do on the high end. But at the same time, we have a service mission for disadvantaged patients.
Is there, would you say, if that were a piece of pie, you were dividing up slices, it's kind of equally divided?
More or less. I think it's skewed toward the tertiary and quaternary care that we provide as opposed to primary care. But a significant fraction of what we do is primary care. At least 40% of what we do is primary care, I think. I think that number is a good number.
Well, and I know our dear friend, Jay Chenier, council member of District 5, and I invite those that haven't seen that podcast, it's August 24th, where we sat down with council member Chenier. And obviously we brought up Aggie Square. Mm-hmm. And I said, so is Aggie Square headed down the right track? He says, I would say it's going down multiple tracks. And so at one point in our conversation, he said, I said, if Chancellor May were here, and I reminded him that he has been in this space, what question would you ask him? He goes, well, you can quote me on this. I said, I will. And I said, and I reminded him, you do know we're being recorded. And he laughed. He said, but I only have 3 more months to go, so it really doesn't matter. So with that as I wanted to get as close of a quote as I could. It's not an exact quote, but it's pretty close. I said, what would you ask Chancellor May? He said, I would ask him to delineate his priorities within Aggie Square for the neighborhoods we serve. What do you want to accomplish? And when will you know you're successful? And what metrics will you use to measure that success? I said, just one more. I said, that seems like a very fair request, very reasonable request. I said, implied, well, why didn't you guys, city, ask that up front before?
I would say they did.
Okay, well, he didn't fess up. If that were asked and answered, he did not fess up.
Well, I'll say this. First of all, Councilmember Chenier has been a great partner throughout the process. We owe him a lot, as well as Councilmember Guerra and the mayor and others. Mayor Steinberg, they've been all really tremendous partners throughout the Aggie Square development process. We're excited that it's coming out of the ground now. We have the cranes are up and foundations have been poured, and we're on schedule to be opening in early 2025. But to answer your question, we put this community benefits partnership agreement together, largely in collaboration with the city council and others, and local community members, which has a few major components. One is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund contribution, which will grow to about $50 million over time. But we've already put in more than I think maybe almost $3 million into it now. We've raised some of that privately, and that's ready now. We've pledged to hire 20% of Aggie Square personnel from the 3 zip codes surrounding the neighbor. One of the ones
95817, 95820.
I don't know what they are.
Yeah, basically
head,
Tahoe
you would know
Park.
better than I.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
And that number will grow to 25% after a certain number of years, which I can't recall. And then we're doing some local, beautification, for lack of a better word, some pedestrian stuff and some bike paths and things like that to make the area more hospitable. I would say, in terms of measures of success, one, meeting those metrics for that hiring is one measure of success. But also we want the local community members to feel like Aggie Square was something that was done with them and for them and not to them. Right. And so we want them to be able to benefit from, not just the employment, but the small business opportunities, the research that's going to be done in partnership with Aggie Square tenants. Just the general raise, the level of visibility that's going to be raised, and opportunities are going to be coming to this region and this part of the city because of Aggie Square's presence. So we're going to have big companies co-locating with us, which will be looking to not only hire but provide services and other things to members of this community that don't exist now. And we think that that's one of the measures of success as well.
Do you have any tenants lined up yet or not yet?
One of the anchor tenants, Cytiva, formerly GE Life Sciences, they're already,
they've signed
up. Amazon Web Services is another one. We have a number in the queue that are in various stages of negotiation that we can't talk about until we get the contracts finalized. But we expect that about 40% of the square footage of Aggie Square will be people other than UC Davis.
Well, it'll be occupied. Do you anticipate it being occupied when the ribbon is cut?
That's the hope. Yeah, that's what we're aiming for. If I'm optimistic, I say yes, but
And that date again, the tentative construction?
Early 2025. We'll
early
open the doors.
2025. Yeah. I should, if I don't get hit by the bus, I should be around.
We're going to invite you there, all the ceremonies.
Oh, I appreciate that. Early 2025. The tenants, is there any provision that was negotiated through the community agreements and all, where the tenants of the building would be outward leaning in terms of their hiring practice?
Well, they're
to
all
the community.
Yeah, we have less control over that. They're all going to be private tenants, and they will have their own hiring practices.
There's no encouraging words
We'll
that
certainly
says
encourage it, and we'll have opportunities to bring the community to the Aggie Square tenants and vice versa. There's lots of meeting space and community development organization space, I'll call it, in the Lifelong Learning Tower that will facilitate some of that. But we will not bring tenants to Aggie Square that are not consistent with our own values. So, but all we can really do is encourage there. We can't make that a requirement.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I was thinking of, again, where we become truly community. I mean, truly community is when, if me as an employee at Aggie Square or any part of UC Davis Health, if I see myself, once I see myself as part of that community in which I'm situated, then I think we will have arrived when it comes to community. It's not just I'm commuting to a place of employment, but I am employed here, but I am here. And I don't say it's a nuanced difference. It's a structural difference. It's a frame of reference difference where I see myself not, I'm flying in to helicopter in to do good work, as opposed to, no, this is my community. I may not even live here, but how I see the community is, this is my community. And I think that, I go out on a limb, I think that Aggie Square and all the opportunities, and not the least of which is having you as the Chancellor of UC Davis, you have a very unique opportunity to bring relational, I'll say it, transformation that I won't say couldn't exist before, but it definitely didn't exist before. And as I was sharing with someone in a totally different situation, but I'll say it now to Chancellor Gary May, you're a unicorn in the sense, and I mean that in a very positive and affirming way. You're a unicorn when it comes to the community, UC Davis, and you have opportunity that didn't exist before. And it's, again, as I like to use, Sean Connery grabbing Kevin Costner's lapels at the death scene of The Untouchables. What are you prepared to do about it? So, with that, that awesome privilege is awesome opportunity and responsibility. So I'm not even sure there's a question in there other than just a statement of fact.
Well, I'll react a little bit. Pastor, perhaps my favorite scripture is Luke 12:48, which says, "To whom much is given, much is required." And I think I put myself in that category. So I take that responsibility very seriously of what I have to do in my role and with my resources to be a benefit to those around me in my community. And I consider this part of my community now. So, we're very intentional about, we have community meetings every quarter. I'm sure you've attended your fair share. I think we have an industry meeting tomorrow. We've hired a community relations manager, Samiko Hong.
She's awesome.
Yeah, you got a chance to meet her. Good.
Yes.
Good. And so all these are steps that we're taking because we want to have that same situation that you described, that people feel like people that are in Aggie Square feel like this is their community, and people that live in the surrounding neighborhoods feel like Aggie Square is part of their community. So, and there'll be housing in Aggie Square, so people who actually live there and will be neighbors, not just flying in or driving in to work. hopefully they'll feel like they are part of this.
I think that will be, I didn't, I'll confess my sin. I didn't look at that as a huge community positive per se. I mean, it's nice, you got housing, but someone who's looking for housing now that lives in community, that's not housing that'll be available to them. But the fact that you will have folks that literally reside on campus, well, they have to go and eat. Well, they can go to La Venedita
Right.
or Old Soul, and they become part of the fabric of the community.
Right.
And that's even with these podcast series. As we have to get past projecting what images we think are on the other person, but actually have those conversations with the person. So it's like, oh no, I spoke with the chancellor. He seems like a sincere man, and this is what he said. And we can only hold him at his word until he proves otherwise.
Yeah. And, it's a process. We're not going to get it right every time, and we're not going to get it right immediately. We're going to have to listen and be flexible and be, again, intentional about what we do. But that's our goal, is to again, for Aggie Square and everything we're doing at the health center, to be viewed as a positive for the local neighbors.
Very good. Well, Chancellor May, if I were smart, I would have added up the number of days from January 28th to this day and said, I sure hope it won't take that many days to have you back in this space. I enjoy our time together. I appreciate and pray for you and your wife and your family as you are on the wall. You are, to borrow again, to go biblical. So we've hit within all three circles now, that you're on the wall and you're doing what you have been called to do. And it's chancellor, pastors, council members, everybody on the outside, they're sure they could do better than what they see being done until they get into that situation and they say, oh, I didn't know. That's why you need to extend grace and just be patient, and let's just hope and pray for an outcome that's beneficial to the whole community. And so, Chancellor, I so thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, and I look forward to the opportunity to speak with you again in the not too distant future.
Likewise, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm always happy to come and speak with you.
Thank you so much.